Tyler, we'll get into your book here that I showed earlier. Like I said, I don't want to give too much away. You can find it on Amazon. You said called for traveling. Sounds like that's the best place to get it. And like I said, I can't recommend it more. Really good book. But Tyler, just tell us about your life, kind of what you cover in the book. Just some points here and there from your time at Penn State to your time in the professionally overseas. I mean, you were everywhere. So
Yeah, I ended up being a lot more well traveled than I ever expected. I grew up in Chicago, came to Penn State, and played basketball there from '98 to '02. And the funny story I'll always remember is I was as a high school kid, I was getting a bunch of letters from different colleges and stuff. And um, the first one I got from Penn State, they actually spelled my name wrong on the letter. I still have it. It was like Schmidt or something. I was like, man, I don't know how you mess up Smith, but
yeah,
I
seriously.
was like, well, I'm definitely not going there. They messed up my name. It's a football school. Like, why would I
Yeah,
go there? But as the recruiting process went along, I was like, oh, this actually is pretty cool. Like, I like these guys, and went to visit and just really liked the players, really liked the coaches. And so it ended up being an awesome fit for me. And then after Penn State, I was nowhere on anybody's radar for the NBA. That was not my expectation. My whole goal, like a win for me, and my dream was just to play professionally somewhere. And I knew guys were playing overseas. Like at the time, Pete Lisicki was kind of a big name for Penn State basketball. He was playing in Italy and he'd been in Switzerland. And he would write our trainer all these funny stories of like living overseas. So we'd be like getting our ankles taped before practice, and our trainer just like comes cracking up out of his little office there. We're like, well, what's going on? He's like, man, you got to read this email from Pete. And it's just all the stuff that would happen living overseas that we just have no concept about of because we're in such a nice um, uh, comfortable place in terms of facilities, right? You've got like great practice gyms and all the gear is brand new and you're getting new shoes and all this stuff. And like you go overseas and you're like taping your own ankles, you don't know if you're going to get paid from like 1 month to the next in some countries. And it's a totally different world. Your facilities, like you might be practicing in like a junior high gym or like who knows. And I mean, some of the floors I played on, like they weren't even wooden floors. They were like a concrete floor or some kind of a, you know, all sport floor that had like 80 different color lines on it because they're playing like 19 different sports or something. And so it's when I left Penn State and my first job was in Holland, and it was like really quick wake up call. Oh my gosh, like this is unbelievable. Like our locker room was literally just a brick room and like a wooden bench, and that was it. Like there was no lockers. You brought your own bag with all your stuff, and then you took your bag home. Like that, like there were showers, but they were awful. Like you don't want to shower, and it was just it was kind of comical. And our home gym held like 1,200 people. So I'm coming from like the BJC, which is like 15,000 to 1,200. So it's definitely a big wake up call. And a lot of guys they don't really survive overseas because it is so uncomfortable. You're so far away from family and everybody, and it can just feel really lonely and kind of like almost like some guys get depressed over there. Like one guy I played with, super athlete, he was doing great for us the first half of the season, um, and just a real nice, fun loving guy. And then he kind of hurt his hand a little bit and was out a couple of games, and all of a sudden, like just his whole morale and just attitude was just like like a nosedive. And we're like, dude, what's wrong with this guy? And it was like, man, he just missed family. It was his first year overseas, and he couldn't hang with it. So I really learned a lot, like just how to adapt to different cultures and not try to make it the United States. The guys that were like just mad about everything. Well, this isn't how we do it back home. And this isn't, what I want it to be. It's like, you just got to go in there and be like, all right, what are we doing? This is your country, your world. Like, let me merge into your lane instead of trying to make it like home.
Tyler. What was the highest level that you played at?
So I ended up having the opportunity to go try out for the Utah Jazz. And I was about 4 years into my pro career. I'd been in Europe for a couple of years. I was in South America for a little while, and it was kind of a crazy story. But um, I went to like they called it like a draft camp, and they would invite 80 guys out to the middle of the woods in Oregon. And there was this facility there that I don't know if USA Basketball ran it, but it was some organization, and uh, there was like a bunch of NBA guys that kind of like had their names basically on cabins like in this wooded area, and there was like this huge gym with like three courts, and they invited all the Chinese pro teams to come, and so they were probably I don't know 15 or 16 pro teams, these Chinese guys like the GMs and some owners and coaches, and you would play for a week, and then at the end of the week, they would rank you from 1 to 80, like how effective you are, whatever system they had, and then you would play games like they were going to do a draft at the end of the week and actually select guys that were there to go play in their pro league in China, and they would have a first round game with like projected first round picks, and like a second round game, third, fourth, on down to maybe like I don't know 5 or 6 rounds. So I got selected. I had really good stats that week and actually played really well. I think part of it was because I was like, whatever, man. I'm here to try and like win a job. Like it didn't matter that I was in the woods. But a lot of these other guys, they were like, man, I got no cell signal. I'm away from like everybody I know. I'm like, dude, it's only a few days, but these guys like they couldn't handle it, and I'm just like I was taking advantage of it and like just playing really hard. So I played really well, and I had a couple of coaches come up to me, American coaches, and they were like, hey man, get ready to like negotiate your salary. And China paid really well. They said you're going to get picked like for sure, first maybe second round. So the top 2 rounds, they um, they got automatic contracts in China, um, and again, really good money. So I'm like, sweet man, I couldn't wait because I'd had some jobs earlier, but they weren't super high paying, and a couple of them didn't work out. A couple of them didn't pay me,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, man, all right, this is the real deal. So they do the draft, and I don't get called until the third round. So I missed out on a contract, and I'm like, what happened? And they're like, I don't know, man, it didn't work out. So anyway, long story short, there was a guy there who comes up to me and is Rick Barry. And for like basketball historians, he played years ago in like 60s and 70s, but he's NBA Hall of Famer. He was one of the underhanded free throw guys, and kind of made that real famous. The last guy to kind of do that. And he says, "Hey man, it's just a shame that you didn't get picked, and it's a shame you're not in the NBA right now." And I'm like, dude, who is this guy? I said, like I've been in Holland. I was down in Uruguay like a couple of years. Like, what are you talking about? And he just had this belief that like I should be on an NBA roster somewhere. And I'm like, you're my new best friend. Like, he's like, I'm gonna make some calls for you. Do you mind? I'm like, you can call anybody you want, man. Like I'm not tied down anywhere. I'm just trying to keep playing and not go work at like Home Depot yet. I want to try and keep this basketball thing going. So he's like, I'm going to call Jerry Sloan and Pat Riley, who was with Miami Heat. I'm like, that sounds fantastic. Can you let me know how that goes? Like, do you want to be my agent? He's like, I don't want to be your agent. He's like, I just want to see you on a team. I'm like, you're amazing. So I get a call a couple weeks later from the Utah Jazz, and they're like, hey, we want to fly you out. Um, just come try out and meet you. I'm like, awesome. So I went out there, had a good 2, 3 day kind of workout, and they said, okay, we'll let you know. And my workouts were done, and I'm just kind of back at the hotel, like, all right, nobody's calling me. Like, do I go get on a plane or do I just go back to the gym? And I'm like, I'm just going to go back to the gym. And, worst case, they're just like, yeah, why are you here? You can leave. But they didn't. They were like, hey, we're glad you showed up again. We want to invite you to training camp. And that's kind of like where you want to get to. Like, Summer League NBA is a really good step, but if you get the training camp, those are really coveted spots because you only get maybe, I don't know, 16, 17 guys for training camp typically. And so I think we had 17, maybe 18 that year. And so I'm like, this is insane. So I got like my own locker with my name on it. It was next to Derek Fisher, who played with the Lakers actually almost all of his career, but there was one year in there where he went over to the Jazz. I'm like, dude, I am next to Derek Fisher. There was like Carlos Boozer, Darren Williams. These guys are like NBA All Stars, and and I was 26. And the funny thing was, a lot of these guys were younger than me, but they were big name guys, obviously being in the NBA. And so it was such a fun experience to just have a taste. I didn't end up making the team, spoiler alert, but it was a great month or so I had in the preseason with those guys.
Man, the Jazz, like the teams. So I mean, you've seen the Last Dance, I'm sure, and man, the battles that they had, like Karl Malone, those guys on the Jazz. If I'm getting that right, I'm more of a
Yeah,
football guy,
yeah,
but yeah, man, like the
yeah. No, you're
battles that
spot
they
on.
had, like your era and the era before that in the '90s, like 2000s, even the 2010s, just unbelievable competition, basketball. What do you think about the NBA now, Tyler? I mean, I feel like it's a little watered down, if you will. It's just I feel like it's not the same.
Yeah, it's definitely evolved and it's gotten a lot more almost kind of European in a way because there's like in the 90s, I was a big Bulls fan growing up in Chicago and we had Tony Kukoc. He was like the big like foreign name and there weren't that many foreign guys. And he was like this big guy, like almost 7 feet tall, but he played like a guard. So that was unusual because any big guy, you just stuck him in the post at the time. But how crazy and how far the game has come when you got guys like Jokic on the Denver Nuggets, who's like, I don't know, 7'1" or 7'2", playing like a guard and like just, not real fast, but super effective. And then you got guys like Steph Curry launching threes from half court and making them. And so the game has really changed a lot. Um, I guess you could call it watered down. I don't know. It's if I'd say watered down, but it definitely has changed so much, over the years, and in some ways, kind of neat to see how it's evolved. I mean, they had that first of its kind where they did like an in-season tournament in the NBA, and that again that was kind of adopted from the European leagues also because when I was in different countries, like I'd be in Holland and we have our regular season and at the end you have playoffs and championship. But they would pause the season right in the middle and then just have like this tournament. And it was this really big deal, single elimination. And the first time I go, I'm like, why are we doing this tournament? Like, isn't that what we're like moving towards? And like, yeah, but it's the cup, it's the Dutch Cup, and I'm like, okay, like whatever. We're trying to beat the other team. That's all I know, But so they have little different ways of doing things over there. And like in soccer overseas, you know how you'll get relegated to like a league below if you don't do well. And it was the same thing with a lot of leagues in basketball. Like I was playing for a team in Italy, and we were in a preseason meeting. Our president like has this big speech to all our fans, and I can't understand anything. It's all in Italian, and I'm like, what do you say? And our coach, who was translating, was like, he says the season will be a success as long as we don't finish last. I'm like, whoa, okay, rousing, pump up speech, man. We're ready to go and not lose a lot of games, just some games, but not too many.
Well,
Because
Tyler,
some of these teams like that, that was it. That was their goal.
uh, one of my favorite stories from your book, and I'll just give this one kind of as a teaser, is when I believe it was Holland when you were almost ran out of gas. Because I've been there, we've all been there, where it was a story where you were coming back from I think a party and you were in the van. You had like the half the team with you in this van, and you kept passing these closed gas stations. It was like 3 a.m. and then you finally found one, and I was like, man, like I've been there. I know how heart wrenching that can be.
Yeah, yeah. It was the weirdest thing because in the U.S. like gas stations are usually 24/7. You got the
Yeah,
self pump, whatever. And man, it definitely, and I'm thinking the same thing. I hadn't been there long enough, I guess, to figure out that was not the case. And man, I literally like we run out of gas. You feel like the pedal going and nothing's happened. I'm like, dude, that's it. And then right as that happened, like around the corner, man, there was this lights from heaven, like like here's this open gas station. But we were so lucky, man, because everybody was asleep in the car. I was the driver that night, and like how great would that would have been if I was like, so everybody wake up, guys. We're on the side of the road and out of gas. It's 3 a.m.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was cold too, right?
Yeah, yeah, because it was like December. It was like a New Year's party that we just gone to, and oh my gosh, what it was just crazy. But like that was the thing when you're living in different countries, man. Just the craziest stuff will just happens, because you have zero control over anything. Are these teams going to pay you? Can you get around? Like, heaven forbid, like you get arrested. Like I knew some guys that like did stupid stuff and get arrested. Now, like you're in jail. Like, oh my gosh, like good luck being in jail in another country. Like jail's bad
Yeah.
enough in the U.S., but some of these other places, man. Like
Yep.
there's one guy, he got mad during the game, and he knocked out a ref, and so then he was in jail, and they're like, guess what? You don't get to eat in jail unless you know somebody. Well, he didn't know anybody, so
Wow.
he was in there for like a week. And they're like, you're going to be in here for like a year, and he's losing his mind. And somehow his agent ended up getting him out. But I'm like, man, I'm gonna be minding my manners while I'm in these other places.
Yeah, that's probably a good, a good tip to follow. Oh yeah, there's some horror stories about stuff like that, Tyler, for sure.